I've never told anyone the full version of this story. Not my wife, not my closest friend, because the moment I do, I have to accept what I think really happened out there, and I am not sure I am ready for that. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 now. Back then, I was 27, single, restless, stupid brave. I used to do solo hiking trips every few months. Deep wilderness, no trail, no signal, just me and my pack. My friends called it a death wish. I called it therapy. This particular trip was in the Ouachita National Forest, Arkansas, late October. The trees were half bare, and the air had that cold, metallic smell that comes right before a storm. I had been out there for 2 days already. Everything was going perfectly. That was about to change. On the afternoon of day 2, the sky turned, not gradually, fast, the way it does when something serious is coming. The wind picked up so hard it was pushing me sideways on the trail. The temperature dropped maybe 15 degrees in 30 minutes. I took a deep breath, unease rising. I was in an exposed section of the ridge. No tree cover, no shelter, nothing. Lightning was already hitting the hills to the west. I could smell the electricity in the air. I needed cover. Fast, I pushed off the trail into the tree line, scanning hard through the rain. And that is when I saw it. Through the trees, a dark shape, low, square, man-made, a cabin, small, old, half swallowed by the forest, like the woods had been slowly digesting it for decades. I did not think twice. I ran straight for it. The door pushed open easily, too easily, like it had been left that way on purpose. Inside, dim light, dry air, the smell of rot, and something else, something I could not name. There was almost nothing in there. A wooden chair, a small table, a rusted cot frame against the wall, a stone fireplace packed with old ash. I stripped off my soaked jacket and just breathed. Safe, dry, alive. That relief lasted maybe 10 minutes. Then I started actually looking around. On the table, a single tin cup. Inside it, water. Not stagnant, not brown. Clean water. Recent. Silence. My stomach dropped. I told myself a hiker had passed through recently. Maybe that morning. Totally possible. I almost believed it. Until I looked at the door. The lock mechanism was on the outside. A heavy iron bracket designed to hold a padlock from the outside only. No latch on the inside, meaning whoever was inside this cabin could not lock themselves in. They could only be locked in. I looked at the walls near the door. Long, deep scratches, dozens of them, carved into the wood at varying heights, like someone had clawed at the walls for a very long time. And that is when I realized something was terribly wrong, not just with the cabin, with the fact that I was still standing inside it. I should have left. I know that, but the storm outside was violent, lightning every few seconds, rain like gravel hammering the metal roof. So I stayed, rifle in my lap, eyes locked on the door. Heavy breathing, tense. About 40 minutes passed. Then I heard it scratching along the outside of the left wall. Low, slow, deliberate. Not a branch, not an animal. Too rhythmic, too patient. Then 2 heavy footsteps on the porch, right outside the door. I stood up instantly, rifle raised, heart slamming violently against my ribs. Nothing happened for a long moment. Heavy breathing, panicking. Then the door handle moved slowly, like someone was testing it from outside, feeling whether it was latched. It was not latched. Nothing was stopping them from walking straight in, but they didn't come in, and that's the part I still can't explain. Why stand at the door in a violent storm and not come in, unless coming inside wasn't the point, unless the point was making sure I stayed inside? That thought hit me like cold water, urgency, intense. I grabbed my pack, threw everything in, hands shaking so badly I could barely close the buckles. I was maybe 20 seconds from the door when the window exploded inward.
glass everywhere. Then a sudden massive heat hit me like a physical wall. The cabin wall was on fire, not catching fire, already burning, like the wood had been treated, waiting for exactly this moment. The flames moved across the ceiling in seconds. I hit the door with my shoulder. Once, twice, it gave, collapsed completely off its frame. I fell through it onto the wet porch and just ran. No direction, no trail, just away. Heavy breathing, running, survival mode. I made it maybe 100 yards into the trees when something hit me hard from the side. We went down together into the mud and wet leaves. I couldn't see a face, just hands grabbing, clawing, pressing down on my throat. I drove my knee up hard, once, twice. The grip loosened. I scrambled up and ran again. Behind me, screaming, not words, just raw sound, rage or pain. I couldn't tell which was. I didn't look back. I ran until my legs stopped working, found a hollow under a fallen oak, and crawled inside, shaking, bleeding, barely breathing. I stayed there until full daylight, hiked out, found a road. A truck driver stopped for me without me even flagging him down. He told me later I looked like a man who had crawled out of the ground. Second-degree burns on my right hand and shoulder, lacerations on my neck. I spent 2 nights in a hospital in Fort Smith. I told the police everything. They drove out to the area 3 days later. Silence. They found the cabin, still standing. No fire damage, no broken window, no scorched walls, no ash on the porch. My shaky voice deeply disturbed. The officer called me personally to tell me, said the cabin looked completely undisturbed, like no one had been inside in years. A long pause. I asked him about the scratches on the interior walls. Silence, he said. There were no scratches. The walls were smooth. I have the burn scars on my hand to prove something happened out there. But what it was, and why that cabin looked like nothing had ever touched it, I genuinely don't know. And some nights, I think that's the most terrifying part of all.
I have climbed a lot of things in my life. Cliffs, rooftops, old bridges, but there is one structure, one specific night that I will never stop thinking about, because what happened up there still has no explanation, none whatsoever. My name is Marcus. I'm 41 now. Back then, I was 29. I had this best friend named Cole. Cole was the kind of guy who could find trouble in an empty room. Not in a dangerous way, just in a, hey, I found this abandoned place on satellite maps. We should definitely go there kind of way. We had been doing urban exploration together since college. Old factories, condemned hospitals, empty warehouses. If a building was forgotten, Cole had already bookmarked it. One Thursday afternoon, he sent me a photo. A tall steel structure rising above a forest canopy, an old fire watchtower, decommissioned for at least 20 years, deep in the Uwharrie National Forest, North Carolina. He said, "We sleep at the top, sunrise view, in and out." I said, "When do we leave?" We drove out early Friday morning, 4 hours on the road, parked at an unmarked pull-off on a Forest Service road. The hike in was about 5 miles off trail, dense, overgrown, completely silent. We found the tower around 3 in the afternoon. I want you to understand something. When you see a structure like that in person, rising maybe 80 feet above the tree line, completely abandoned, completely silent, it does something to you. Something between awe and dread. The base was completely open. No fence, no warning signs, nothing at all. Just 4 steel legs planted deep in the earth and a zigzag staircase climbing into the sky. Some of the lower railings were gone. Rust covered absolutely everything. Several bolts had corroded completely through. Cole was already halfway up before I even finished inspecting the first landing. I told him to slow down. He slowed down, slightly. We made it to the top together, carefully. The cab was a small square room with windows on all 4 sides and a wraparound metal walkway outside. The view was
absolutely unreal. Miles of unbroken forest in every direction. The sun was maybe 90 minutes from setting. We cracked a couple of beers, sat on the walkway, and watched the sky slowly change colors. For about 2 hours, everything was perfect. That was about to change. The sun went down. The forest below us turned black. Not dark, black. No lights anywhere. No roads, no houses, no signs of life. Just an ocean of darkness and treetops. Cole was telling some story. I was not really listening because something below caught my eye. A light moving through the trees. Far away, maybe half a mile out, but clearly undeniably there. A steady, pale glow, weaving slowly between the trunks. I cut Cole off mid-sentence. He looked where I was pointing. We both watched it in complete silence. Heavy breathing, growing unease. It moved too smoothly. No swinging, no bobbing, no variation, like it was floating 6 inches off the ground. Cole said maybe it was a hiker with a headlamp. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But hikers do not move like that. Hikers stumble. Hikers pause. Hikers look around. This thing moved like it was on an invisible track, perfectly, steadily, and directly toward us. Silence. And that is when I realized something was very wrong. We watched that light for 15 straight minutes. Neither of us spoke a single word. Shaky voice, fear taking over. It reached the base of the tower. Then it stopped directly below us. We both leaned over the railing and looked straight down. We could clearly see the glow, but we could not see what was producing it. No person, no lantern, no device, nothing. Just light, sitting there, completely still. Silence. Heavy, suffocating. Cole called down loudly. "Hello? Anyone down there?" Nothing. Not even an echo came back. Whisper. Deeply unsettled. The entire forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no insects, no birds, nothing. Just that pale, cold light waiting patiently at the bottom of our only way down. We went inside the cab, pulled the door firmly shut behind us, sat with our backs pressed against opposite walls. Heavy breathing, scared, trapped feeling. 20 minutes passed, maybe 30. Then we heard the first sound. Silence. A deep metallic groan from somewhere below us. Low, slow, and long, like a thick steel beam being deliberately bent. Then another sound from a completely different side of the structure. Shaky voice, panic rising. Then a rhythmic clanging. Not random, not accidental, evenly spaced, like something patiently counting down. Cole grabbed my arm hard. He was shaking. Whisper, disbelief. I had never seen Cole scared before that night, not once in 10 years of friendship. Pause. The sounds kept shifting position, different levels, different sides, like something was slowly circling the entire tower below us in the pitch black. Heavy breathing, full panic. I moved carefully to the window on the south side and looked out, and I saw it. A shape, right there, outside the glass, standing on the narrow walkway. Silence, frozen with terror, tall, perfectly still, facing directly at the window, just standing there in complete darkness on a walkway 80 feet above the ground. Shaky voice, barely holding together. I grabbed Cole and pulled him hard away from the windows. We pressed our backs firmly against the door, both of us, shoulder to shoulder, breathing hard and fast. I honestly don't know how long we sat like that. It felt like hours. Pause. Every few minutes, another metallic sound drifted up from below. Patient, deliberate, like something that had absolutely nowhere else to be. Pause. And then, slowly, the sound stopped completely. The pale light at the base had vanished. The normal forest sounds gradually returned. Insects, wind, leaves rustling. Exhausted relief. We did not sleep. We did not move from that door. We sat there completely still until the sky outside finally turned gray. Pause. When it was light enough to see clearly, Cole counted to 3 and we threw the door open hard. The walkway was completely empty. Silence. Disbelief. Nothing there. Not a single trace. We grabbed our bags and started descending immediately, as fast as we could safely move. Heavy breathing. Urgency. We made it about 2/3 2/3 of the way down when Cole suddenly stopped dead in front of me. Dread. I almost walked straight into him. I looked past his shoulder, and my stomach dropped completely. Silence. An entire section of staircase was gone. Pause. Not broken, not rusted through, not collapsed. Gone. Cleanly removed. Fresh bolt holes where the brackets had been mounted. A gap of roughly 12 feet of open air between us and the next landing below. Shaky voice. Horrified disbelief. Someone had physically disassembled an entire section of steel staircase in complete darkness while we were sitting directly above them. Pause. And we heard nothing. Nothing nearly loud enough to explain it. Silence. We had absolutely no choice. We had to jump the gap. Shouting, urgency, fear. Cole landed hard and twisted his knee badly. I made it clean across. We got down the remaining stairs as fast as possible, and then we ran. We made it back to the car, drove in complete silence for almost an hour straight. Pause. Heavy. Processing. Cole finally spoke quietly. He asked me if I remembered the metallic sounds we had heard, the rhythmic clanging from below. Pause. I said yes. He said those sounds had stopped before I saw the figure standing outside the window. Silence. Chilling realization. I had not registered that clearly at the time. Long pause. Whatever was making those sounds below us had completely stopped and then somehow appeared outside our window, 80 feet up, with no working staircase between the 2 points. Long pause. Voice cracks, emotional, overwhelmed. We reported everything to the Forest Service the following week. An officer went out to inspect the tower. Pause. He called Cole personally to report back. Silence. The missing section of staircase was fully back in place. Every single bolt, every bracket, every connection, perfectly reinstalled, as if it had never been touched at all. Long pause. Whisper. Haunted.
I have been camping alone for over 15 years. I have seen bears. I have slept through violent storms. I have gotten lost for 2 full days in the middle of nowhere. None of that prepared me for what happened in those woods, because whatever was out there with me was not just watching. It already knew exactly where I was. My name is Aaron. I'm 44 now. I have been doing solo camping since my late 20s. My wife calls it my annual disappearing act. She is not entirely wrong. I always carry a rifle on solo trips, a bolt-action .308, not because I'm paranoid, just because being deep in the backcountry without one feels irresponsible. About 3 years ago, I had a brutal stretch at work. Everything was piling up. My head was not in a good place. Deep breath. I needed trees. I needed silence. I needed to disappear for a few days. So I packed my gear, loaded the rifle, and drove out to the Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia. Over 900,000 acres of pure wilderness. If you know where to go, you can walk for days without seeing another human being. That was exactly what I needed, or so I thought. I parked at a remote trailhead on a Wednesday morning, started hiking around 9 a.m. The plan was simple. 4 nights, deep backcountry, just me and the trees. The first day was perfect. Cool air, dense canopy, the kind of silence that actually heals something inside you. Deep breath. Genuine relief. I covered about 8 miles before finding a flat clearing near a slow-moving creek. Set up camp, built a fire, cooked some food, and watched the flames die down. I fell asleep early, slept better than I had in months. The second morning, I packed up and pushed deeper into the forest. The terrain changed around midday. The trees got older, taller. The canopy above me became so thick it blocked out most of the sky. It was quieter in there, a different kind of quiet. Deep breath. Uneasy, not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, like the forest was holding its breath. I found a good campsite around 4 p.m., set up, built a fire, ate, turned in around 9. That
is when everything changed. I woke up suddenly at some point in the night. No sound had woken me. My brain just switched on. Heavy breathing. Disoriented, I lay completely still, staring at the dark ceiling of my tent, and then I noticed something. Shaky voice, a faint orange glow coming through the walls of my tent. I unzipped the flap slowly and looked out. Gasp. Quiet shock. Maybe 150 yards away through the trees. A fire, small, steady, flickering, exactly like a campfire. I watched it for several minutes, waiting to hear voices, waiting to hear movement. Nothing, just the fire, burning quietly in the darkness. I told myself it was another camper, someone who had gone to sleep and left their fire burning. Irresponsible, but not unusual. Nervous laugh. Hollow. I watched it a few more minutes, then zipped my tent and went back to sleep. The next morning, that fire was the first thing I thought about. I packed up camp and hiked toward where it had been. It took me about 10 minutes to reach the area. I stopped. Silence. Confusion. There was no fire pit, no ring of stones, no pile of ash, no scorched ground, no charred wood. Shaky voice. The ground was completely undisturbed, like no one had set foot in there in months. I walked the entire clearing twice, checked every inch of it. Nothing. Silence. I stood there for a long time, genuinely unable to process what I was seeing, or rather, what I was not seeing. Whisper. I had watched that fire burn for several minutes with my own eyes, and yet the ground beneath it looked completely untouched. That's when I realized something was wrong. I pushed that thought down and kept hiking. I still had 2 more nights planned, and I wasn't about to let something I couldn't explain ruin the trip. Nervous laugh, convincing himself. By mid-afternoon, I was deep in the oldest section of the forest. Massive trees, near total silence. I made camp around 4 p.m., doused my fire just after 9, turned in for the night. I don't know what time it was when the first sound awoke me. Heavy breathing, jolted awake. A massive cracking sound, like a thick branch being snapped, except it kept going, violent, extended, 3 or 4 full seconds. Then a deep, resonant impact that I felt in the ground beneath me. Gasp. A tree had fallen, somewhere deep in the forest. Not close, but close enough to feel. I lay there trying to make sense of it. No storm, no wind, no rain. There was absolutely no reason for a tree to fall on a night like this. Shaky voice. But before I could finish that thought, it happened again. Silence. Dread. Same violent cracking, same extended snapping sound, same deep ground-shaking impact, but this time much louder, much closer, and from a completely different direction. Heavy breathing, panic rising. I sat up immediately. 2 trees, same night, no wind, different parts of the forest. That wasn't possible. Pause. I grabbed my rifle, chambered around as quietly as I could. Whisper. Terrified. And that's when I heard the third sound. Silence. A low, continuous rumbling, deep in the chest, like a growl, but longer, steadier, like something producing that sound on purpose. Pause. It went on for what felt like a full minute, without stopping, without variation, without breath. Shaky voice. I've heard bears. I've heard elk screaming in the dark. This was none of those things. Whisper. This sounded like something that wanted me to hear it. Pause. I aimed my rifle at the tent door and didn't move. Heavy breathing. The sound eventually faded, not stopping, fading, like whatever was making it had slowly moved away. Long pause. I didn't sleep, not a single minute. Deep breath. Exhausted, terrified. As soon as gray light appeared outside my tent, I packed everything as fast as I could. Hands shaking, heart still hammering. Pause. I needed to see the fallen tree. I needed to confirm I hadn't imagined everything. Heavy breathing. I found it after about 10 minutes. Gasp. In disgust. The thing was enormous. Its trunk lying at an angle across a shallow slope. Broken branches and debris scattered everywhere around it. Pause. It was real. It had actually fallen. Pause. I walked over to the stump, about 3 feet high. The break point was pale and fresh, but the break itself, shaky voice, deeply disturbed, wasn't clean. Not wind damage, not root failure. The wood had been torn apart, long irregular grooves running through the stump at different angles, some of them at least an inch deep. Whisper, like something had gouged and chewed through that trunk deliberately until the tree came down. Pause. Bark had been stripped away in long peeling sections. The exposed wood underneath had that same aggressive, gouged appearance. Silence. Nauseating dread. I've seen beaver damage. This wasn't that. I've seen storm damage. This wasn't that either. Shaky voice. Something had worked on that tree with deliberate, sustained force until it fell. Pause. I started backing away slowly. I needed to leave, right now. Heavy breathing, urgency building. But as I turned, something near the broken branches caught my eye. Pause. A small cluster of items sitting on the ground, neatly arranged. Pause. I walked closer. Gasp. Horror. A red bandana. A small compass. Both mine. Silence. I tore open my pack right there and confirmed it. Both items were missing. Whisper, berefting. Something had been inside my pack while I slept. Long pause, and it had carried those items here to this exact tree and placed them carefully on the ground. Whisper, breaking, like it was leaving me a message. Silence. I ran. I don't care if that was the right decision. I ran as fast as I could, under the weight of my full pack, rifle in both hands, for as long as my legs could carry me. Heavy breathing. The whole time, every single step, I felt it. That feeling of being watched, of something keeping pace just beyond the tree line. Shaky voice. I never saw anything. I never heard footsteps. Pause. But I